This is a WKYT podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Victor and Andrea, as Andrea tries to throw a grape at me. Andrea, are you going to eat your breakfast while we're recording this? Or
wouldn't be
lunch,
the first time.
I guess technically it's lunch for you since you've been up since, 2 a.m.?
I still don't know what my eating schedule is. I've never quite figured that out. I just eat whenever I have time.
Good. All right.
It's a great life I lead. All right. So one thing I wanted to talk to you about, you got to do something.
You ambushed me.
Oh, you got to do something cool. You got to go cover the Oaks.
I did. It was a
You look so sharp out there. That's my favorite
thanks.
part about it is the pageantry.
Yes, everyone looking nice instead of the hot mess that I normally am. Yeah, it was really fun. I'd covered it once before as a reporter. Mm-hmm. So literally just some stuff in the infield, which I was also in the infield this time too. And I put one of those stories so far on Facebook. Hopefully by the time this goes up, I'll put the second one up.
Okay.
They're funny. You'll have to check it
You're
out.
the right person to send to the infield. I feel like you really have to think about who you're assigning to each location.
Yes.
Like the infield is fun.
There you go.
You got to have somebody with some personality to get in there and get dirty with the infielders.
Well, and I did my best not to get dirty since I had to.
You
also
still had to
feel like-
anchor.
It helped that the rain stopped. So I got to report, but then I also field anchored with Amber, and that was my first time, and she helped a lot, made it really easy. She kind of just run me down, but I am very much. I can ad-lib some, but I like the prompter just to give me a little bit of
right
direction.
Did you all not have one at all out there?
No. Yeah, no. So it's basically just, and luckily I didn't have any big reads. Mine was just kind of like, okay, come in, introduce this, So there was, but it was all, and I think Amber had the largest part that she had to memorize.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really fun.
She had to carry you.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the first time she's had to do that.
I'm
It's
kidding.
not the first time a woman has had to pick up my slack.
My first job ever, there was no teleprompter. I think I've talked about this a little bit, but remember
the dog?
My dog was my co-anchor.
Your dog co-anchor. The teleprompter just said bark.
Yeah, he could on command.
Oh,
Radar
nice.
was so talented. But yeah, like me, and it was actually Chris Johnson.
Nice.
We would literally just sit and talk, and I kind of just freestyled the whole thing, which has really helped me down the line as far as mornings, because you do a lot more of that in mornings.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. And also, back to your style. Jim Caldwell got a very interesting critique the other day. So our news director came down, and, Jim had gotten a new outfit, and he's like, "What do you think?" Kind of posing. And Robert's like, "It's very Victor Puente-esque." What do you think? I want to know your opinion. Do you think that's a good or bad thing?
Well, I don't think it's a good thing. I think he meant that Jim was mixing patterns. Is that what was happening?
You're bold.
Was Jim mixing patterns?
I don't recall.
Because that was one thing I would do quite a bit of. I had a lot of shirts that I liked and some ties that I liked. And, if they went together, who knows?
We've seen how you dress your daughter, so.
Well, that too. And so, there would be times that I would get home and my wife would look at me and go, "You wore that?"
Oh!
And so since then, I've gotten rid of most of my patterned shirts.
Mm-hmm.
Most of my shirts now are just white because it does make it easier to match up ties. I'll introduce some more occasionally, but yeah, mostly it's just the suits and the ties change.
Isn't that just the ultimate burn? I know my mom will look at me and she'll be like, "Oh, is that what you're wearing?"
Oh, yeah. So,
and you just get that look and you're like,
I'm really
"Not
curious
anymore."
to know what Jim was wearing.
You'll have to talk to him. I'm sure he has feelings about it, and we'll be happy to go over them with you.
He got to go to the Oaks also.
He did. I think he enjoyed it, but it wasn't the best weather, which is always tough for him. When it's bad weather, it's like everybody yells at him.
Well, I'll say this. Actually, so it was raining when we first got there. We had to park in I'll just go through the whole day. So I left here around 7 a.m. I had to pick up Deanne Stevens in Louisville as Andrea tries to hide her chewing. You're doing a great job. I can barely hear it. So
I'm listening.
No,
I can multitask.
Okay, no, you're doing a great job. Can't hear the yogurt at all. So anyway, I picked up Deanna in Louisville. We went to the expo centers where they were parking us all, and then we took buses over, which was really quick in the morning. I mean, I was impressed with how efficient everything was. At the end of the day, not as efficient because you've got, tens of thousands, 100, however many people leaving. So we stood in line for about an hour.
You beat the crowd up top, but
exactly.
Not on the way home.
We stood in line outside Churchill Downs for an hour to get on the bus to go back to the expo center. Me, Amber, Caitlin, our producer, and Chris Lipscomb. So just the four of us just hanging out, having a good
gracious.
time. So yeah, we eventually made it out. But so we get there that morning, and I know what I have to do throughout the day. I had some infield pieces and then some other stuff. So I was able to knock out most of my stuff within about an hour and a half, just because I knew what I had to do. So I got like 8 interviews right off the bat.
Yeah.
And then just a lot of video. I didn't even take a tripod in the infield because it's just
Now, I've never experienced the infield at the Derby or at the Oaks, so I don't know. What was the craziest thing you saw?
Calmer.
Really?
On
It's
Oaks.
not everything?
On Oaks?
Oh,
No.
yeah, true.
On Derby, it is insane. Because I also worked the Derby. I worked the actual Derby for 5 years in my previous job as a photographer. And I mean, imagine Mardi Gras in the middle of the Kentucky Derby. That's what some of it's like.
All right.
There are.
I want a specific something.
Well, okay. So if it rains, there's one section that is a little bit lower, and you'll get like a mud lake almost. And so people were stripping down to their underwear.
The
And
skivvies.
just doing a slip and slide, like just running, and they were just standing there covered in mud. And I'm thinking, where's your stuff?
Grown
what
adults.
Are you doing? Yeah, these are grown. I'm like, what are you doing the rest of the day? I had a lot of questions. There's a row of porta potties near those that guys.
Do you have an exit strategy?
Exactly. I don't
You're
know.
covered in mud. Your car.
Great question. So there's a row of porta potties that guys. This was all guys doing. Well, I take that back. The mud stuff, guys and girls. Everybody was just getting crazy. I don't mean like that. It was just, I don't know, just like slip and slide. But so there is a giant row of porta potties. Guys would climb up on one and then run across the top of them, and people would throw beer cans at them to try to hit them, to knock them down. But the police were there waiting, because you obviously shouldn't be doing this. So the police would be there waiting, and as soon as they fell off, they'd grab them and arrest them. And I remember there was one guy who made it all the way across, and he hit the end and just took off.
Wow, he made it.
Yeah, everybody clapped.
He
Yay!
made it. This reminds me of like a world before smartphones, when you just had to be creative with
exactly.
your time.
I mean, people just didn't have anything else to do, I guess. So yeah, the infield's crazy. But on Oaks, it was much less crazy. So it rained that morning, but by around 10, the rain had stopped, and Oaks ended up being beautiful. I mean, there was some mud back where we were, and I'm glad I wore my hiking boots instead of my dress shoes. And then Brian Milam and Alex Walker wore the same suit, essentially, which was funny. And so we all kind of joked about that with them.
All right, we gotta focus. We gotta get to our guest today.
Oh, yeah, sorry, too much rambling here. Point was, it was a good time at the Oaks, and I had to show Alex where the media room was so we could go eat some of that delicious Churchill Downs food.
I will tell you a funny story about Alex Walker on the other side of this interview.
All right, I'm down with that. So let's talk about our guest today, Mr. Mitchell Grogg, someone who genuinely loves his job.
Oh, it'd be tough to find someone more passionate about his job than Mitchell, and about this company than Mitchell. Mitchell is a self-proclaimed company man. He is.
No, I'm
not wrong.
He's
nodding in agreement.
Yeah.
He's great and such a sweetheart, and he's done a lot as far as the news industry is concerned.
Yeah, that's one thing he talks about. He's anchored, he's reported, he's produced, so he knows what it's like to be out in the field.
Yeah. So let's just get into it. Let Mitchell speak for himself. You all are going to be entertained, I have no doubt.
Hello, everyone. We're here with... Oh, Andrea, are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay, you just smiled all of a sudden.
Oh, I'm sorry. I like to see your face.
Andrea, why don't you
I feel like we said the
today?
exact same thing last week.
Yeah,
You're
we
like, why are
basically
you
did.
smiling?
I'm not used to Andrea being happy
Don't
about
interrogate
stuff, so
me. All right, so joining us today is someone that I feel like we can talk to for a long time. Mitchell Grogg.
Hello.
He is currently one of our producers at this station, but you've worn many hats, right, Mitchell?
I have. In the going on 6 years that I've been in this business, I've anchored, I've produced, I've reported, done about everything.
Now, here is something that maybe you don't know. Mitchell and I went to school together at Western. I
What?
don't even know if he remembers this, but
I did not know that.
remember seeing Mitchell on campus because he was always dressed up. Did you carry a briefcase?
Typically.
I knew it.
Yeah.
I was like, that had to have been Mitchell. Because when I re-met you later in life, I was like, I know this guy.
Which, if you see Mitchell now, he is, again, he will be wearing a dress shirt and tie, when some of our other male producers will probably be wearing, like, jeans and a shirt that may or may not have been washed. Who knows?
Who knows?
Because that's the thing. When you're not on air, a lot of times people just dress down. but Mitchell always dresses up.
And imagine my shift when people don't even see
Oh,
most
my
of the people
goodness.
that work here. There's a skeleton crew overnight.
That's part of
Now,
the
for
joy
the
of being
record,
overnight producers.
I didn't start wearing a tie until I started working daylight hours, but I figure, why not? And I, from my time on the air, I've got this vast collection of ties, so why not use them?
Put them to use. I love that. All right,
Plus,
so
you never know when somebody's going to go down. Like what
and
if
you got a pinch hit.
Yeah. Suddenly they're
Mitchell
like,
can be called up to the plate, and he has experience.
that's the other thing. It's weird how many people you realize in the newsroom just have experience doing different jobs.
Oh, yeah. So let's talk about Mitchell. So how did this crazy journey begin? Where were you born? Where are you from?
I'm from Evansville, Indiana, originally.
Okay. We won't hold that against you.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
It's not that far from Kentucky. It's just across the river from Henderson. So I've got, I've always kind of had that closeness to Kentucky for a long time. I mean, even from the, the first station I interned at, which is now one of our sister stations, WFIE in Evansville, they cover a lot of news in Kentucky
They
there.
do.
And I occasionally made some visits to their Owensboro bureau when I interned there, 8 years ago this summer. Which it's hard to believe it's been that long.
Aren't you sorry? I feel old when I think about things
Yeah.
like that. You know what I mean? And we're not. I know
started
we're not.
in 2003.
But you look good. That's
All
all
right,
that matters,
there you
baby.
go.
It's that Botox.
But yeah, no,
It's working for you.
Yeah, okay. But no, it is weird. You start to, especially when you start to see newer people come into the newsroom and they tell you, when they graduated high school, and you realize like, oh, I was already working. I'd been in the business 10 years when you graduated high
All right,
school.
quit
Nice.
crying. So
Sorry.
back
And I'm
to
not
your-
in the. That's not the case with me yet.
Speaking of high school, what were you like in high school? What were you into?
I was on the debate team.
This
I
does
can
not
see that,
surprise
Yeah,
me.
that was my big claim to fame. I guess the only real big thing I went to. I qualified for the national tournament my junior year. So between my junior and senior years of high school, went to the national debate tournament. It was at one point called the National Forensic League, the NFL. The joke with the coach was,
I love it.
You tell people that you're a lifetime member of the NFL and you stop there.
Yeah, stop talking.
Yeah.
Learn when to stop talking.
Exactly. But it was in, of all places, Las Vegas. The unfortunate thing is I was 17 years old and I've got this trip to Las Vegas, but it was still a lot of fun. I learned a lot.
There are places they don't care in Las Vegas.
No. I would
Actually,
say
they're
just the opposite. They're
stricter.
very strict, yeah,
Okay.
because they are so. They don't want to get. Nobody wants to get shut down. Nobody wants to lose money.
You sound like you speak from experience.
Well, I've been to Las Vegas before, and one time I went with my then girlfriend and her family. We were going to California, and she was 20 and I was 21. So I was able to gamble. So it was like at one point I was at a slot machine putting quarters in, and she was, 2 feet behind me. And some guy came up and he's like, "I need to see both your IDs." And
Oh,
so then
we'd
he made it's like, no, she has to go stand over there. She can't even be near you
Dang.
while you're playing. So yeah, they are on top of it.
Well, and I remember we went to see a show in Las Vegas because, we'd been eliminated, but we assumed that we were going to go all the way in the tournament, my debate partner and I and my coach. So one of the shows we saw was within a casino, which is common there. And basically we had to keep walking because,
Yeah, you can't
even though we were in the casino, it's like, you have to go through the casino to get to the auditorium where the show is.
Giving me no other choice.
But, you have to basically keep walking or else there's a problem.
So I know personally I love arguing. And I don't get offended. It's like I enjoy the art of arguing. Victor's shaking his head like he believes that 100%. But I'm assuming you're the
I don't
same.
want to contradict you and start an argument.
There you go.
Oh, no, I
the
very
same
rarely do I
way?
take it personally. It's because if you debate, competitively, you can't.
Well, I was going to say, especially in debate, it's literally arguments. So you can't take it personally.
Yeah, and I continued in college, too. I was on Western's debate team for 3 years. And, you're going up against, some of the best. And, thankfully, WKU has a team that has a pretty good reputation, to say the least. So, when you're doing that, you can't get offended because your teammates are really good. The people you're going up against are really good. And I was not one of the best among them. But to have the opportunity to compete among the best speakers and the best debaters in the country is really good. And the only reason I left was I had to make a decision kind of at the end of my junior year. It was really good, but it was getting in the way of me doing things for the student newscast. And at the end of the day, I had to say, I'm looking at a career in journalism. I'm not looking at a career in academia or in speech and debate. Not that those aren't good careers and not that you can't make an impact, but that wasn't my direction. So I ended up leaving after 3 years, but it was a great experience.
I would assume it'd be great preparation, too, for this job to be able to see two sides of a story. I think that probably impacts the way you write, the way you approach stories. So, spoiler alert, he graduated.
Well, my question was, when you went to college, was it specifically for broadcasting, or was it?
Yeah.
Did you know that's what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I've known since about age 13 that this is what I
wow.
wanted to do.
Did you have a hero or like anything that like set that into motion?
Just watching local news was the big thing. Tom Brokaw was the person who I watched growing up. The station that I watched back home happened to be an NBC affiliate. Of course, we're CBS here, but it happened to be an NBC affiliate that I watched growing up. So I'd finish watching the 5 o'clock news that was local, which was also good, and then I'd watch Tom Brokaw. So I hated to see it when he retired. I think it was in 8th grade when he retired and Brian Williams took that newscast over. But he was my big one. Unfortunately, I didn't really look into the life of Peter Jennings until after he passed away of lung cancer in 2005. But he was one of the big ones. You look back and study, but Tom Brokaw was the big one. And of course, there were people who I watched. I mean, Randy Moore, who's one of the main anchors at WFIE in Evansville. He worked at another station at the time, but he was a really good anchor who I watched a lot back home in Evansville.
And people forget just how big of an impact the anchors had then, because you had, at least when I was younger, a lot fewer channels, and especially there weren't kind of specialized news cable channels, so most people got their news from one of the big three. So,
I always love it, because I remember when I was younger, if I would see like a news anchor or someone from TV, eating out at a restaurant, I'd like lean over and be like, "Oh my gosh, that's Sam Jacobs sitting over there. Don't look." And like, I still see it. Like if I go to the gas station with Bill, he's been here so long, everybody knows him and loves him. So it's just like you're a rock star in that community. You are.
Yeah, there are people very excited about seeing Bill, and then occasionally I get people looking at me going,
why do I know
you?
Yeah, that's what I get too.
Yeah.
We haven't reached that level yet.
So then after graduating, was YMT your first?
Yeah, I went to WYMT first. I started there about 6 weeks after I graduated.
And what, I guess, did you explore different places, or was it kind of like, okay, this is a good, because YMT is a great place to go. I've seen so many people be able to succeed because you do so much.
Yes. A little bit of a coincidence. When you start out in this business, you send resumes all over the country. I probably sent 50, resumes and reels and DVDs out to stations across the country and ended up at WYMT. I think it helped that I met, the general manager there, Neil Middleton, at an AP Awards ceremony while I was still in college, so there was that connection established. So
Were you winning awards?
I actually didn't win an award that year.
Really?
I wasn't nominated for anything, but I had done a lot with that student newscast. So I had been on some of the teams that had produced those. I don't know if I had actually had a hand in any of the award-winning work or not. I'd have to look back and see. But my senior year, I ended up winning an award for that work, but that didn't come until my first year at WYMT, because those awards kind of are a year after. So I didn't have any actual awards at that point, but I was at the ceremony, ended up meeting my future general manager, and was a familiar face, went into interview, and started there in July of 2013.
That was a smart networking move on your part to just show up, and just experience it. I think that's great.
That's one of the things I tell, sometimes people ask me about getting into this business. It's like, it's a lot of, they're a lot more likely to hire you if they already know who you are, even if it's just from internships or
I shudder
bugging people.
I shudder to think of the places I sent reels to. Like, I probably was sending reels to Dallas, Texas, out of college like an idiot,
Why
and it was
they hire
so
me?
bad. Exactly. It's like you're so clueless and green going into it. I had no idea, like, market size and stuff like that.
Well, the funny thing is, I kept a list of all of the places that I sent resumes to the first time around, and one of them was KKTV.
Oh, wow.
Where I ended up working for my second job.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Okay. And that was in Colorado, which we'll get to that soon.
Yes.
But let's go back to YMT. So your first role was what, reporting?
I started out as a reporter there. There was an opening for the morning anchor position, so they brought me in to do a couple of air checks with the then morning anchor, Michelle Herron. So I did a couple of air checks. They liked it. They gave me the great opportunity to anchor mornings there. And it was amazing how quick it happened, because normally it doesn't happen that way, but just, I guess the right skill set on my part, a little bit of luck, and the fact that there was the opening. I started anchoring there within about a month of starting at the station. And it was kind of crazy. The first week that I was, I knew I was going to anchor, I did an air check, and, the air check went well enough that I started anchoring the next day after they had named me the anchor. And then that Friday there was, a big breaking story, and I was getting ready for work and almost ready to head out the door, and I got a call from Michelle, my co-anchor, who said, we don't know much about this, but you're not anchoring this morning. You're going to be going out live, and all we know is that, this is a big story. So I ended up being off the desk for the first Friday that I would have anchored, but it was just because it was, a big story. Yeah, and, they didn't have a morning reporter there, so I was the morning reporter. They pulled me off the desk.
You were field anchoring, Mitchell.
Yes.
Come on, we got to sell this now. So at a small station, you wear a lot of hats, and obviously that's a small community. And I do want to say before I forget, my brother's roommate from college, his name is Ethan Hamblin, and he's from Gays Creek, so he watched YMT growing up, and he always spoke so highly of you.
Well, thank
he used
you.
to watch you on YMT, and he just loved you and said, you were always involved with community events, and he would see you out and about, so I think that's really important that you did that.
That was important to me, because the way I saw it was sometimes going into a smaller station that you're not going to be there for a long time. Mm-hmm. But I always took the perspective of, even if I'm not going to be there forever, I'm going to invest in the community while I can. And 3 years, you get a lot of opportunities to invest in the community. So, and it's easy to do when you are, young, you're fresh out of college, you're single, you've got those opportunities to really reach out in the community. And I think that was what I was called to be doing at the time. I got involved with Kiwanis, a good friend of mine. Actually, the best man at my wedding, Brandon Robinson, got me involved in Kiwanis there, where I was able to do a lot, and it was a great opportunity. And, just, being out there, I think helps a lot. I might as well, show that, yeah, I'm trying to be a part of this community if I'm going to be serving it in the way that I was.
And viewers noticed, obviously, and they appreciated that.
Nice. So then you finish up 3 years there. At that point, did you know I'm going to move on somewhere else?
I did, and it was kind of interesting how I kind of made that transition, because when I started at YMT, I was kind of on an anchor reporter track. So when I was first started at YMT, and I'd say for the first 2 years or so that I was there, I would go in. I was the morning anchor, so I'd be there 4 o'clock in the morning. I'd anchor the morning newscast that went from 5 to 7. And then I would go out and turn a story for the 4 or 6 o'clock newscast. So it was anchor and reporter. So I was, reporting and anchoring, and I really liked that role, but wanted to get into more of the producing side. I'd always had kind of an idea that I wanted to do some producing. I dabbled in producing in college. So, approached my superiors, and the management there was okay with it. So actually the last 9 months there, I was basically the full-time morning producer. So I stopped reporting. And when I say I stopped reporting, I stopped going out in the field and reporting. And for the last 9 months or so there, I went from waking up early and anchoring the news and turning a story for a later newscast to going in the middle of the night. I'd get there 11 at night, midnight, work through the night, produce the morning newscast and anchor it, and then I'd leave by about 9 o'clock in the morning, because at that point, the shift was over, and then you hand it off to the next shift. And I found that I really enjoyed producing. So I ended up, when I was looking for that next step, looking for producing jobs.
It's funny. I remember when I was working in Bowling Green, I did the evening newscast. So I guess you and I may have slightly overlapped at times. And you would call our station asking for stories.
Yeah.
So it's funny how the world is so small. Yeah, I just think that's interesting. And then we finally crossed paths here at KYT.
Exactly. And I mean, Shelby McCuddy, our morning executive producer, I would call him frequently when I was working in Hazard, because WYMT and WKYT, there's a lot of overlap in the coverage area. Yep. So if KYT covered something that I liked, I would ask for that. There were times that KYT would ask for something that we were covering. So there's a lot of sharing that goes on there, and there still is. When I'm even now when I was working mornings here at WKYT, there would be communication overnight about things that were going on in areas that we both cover.
Yeah.
So then you went from YMT to Colorado? Is that what you said?
Yeah, Colorado Springs.
Yeah.
I almost worked there, and it's one of the most beautiful places. I interviewed at a station there, but...
It is beautiful out there, and I mean, if you like hiking and outdoors, it's a wonderful place. I was only there for 9 months before the opportunity at WKYT came up, but worked mornings there. I did the hour-long 4 p.m. newscast there. A great opportunity, a great chance to see, just a beautiful part of the country. A great team and a great newsroom there, and of course, I met my wife out there. That was the highlight. I met my wife out in Colorado Springs.
So tell us that story. How did you guys meet?
So a funny thing, it was Labor Day weekend, and a church group was organizing this camping trip. I hadn't been camping except for one Boy Scout trip when I was 8 or 9. So I had no idea what I was doing. Bought a sleeping bag for the trip because everything else I understood would be provided. And went on this church camping trip and met Cheryl, and the rest is history. We exchanged phone numbers then, and it was Labor Day weekend. So Labor Day, of course, my wife's a teacher. She had off that day. Yeah. I work in news, so I was working, and ended up having breakfast after that. And
that was your first date?
Well, it wasn't just us, so that wasn't our first date. But funny story. I think the Friday afterward, I get a text from Cheryl, and she said, I'm going on a hike. Would you like to come with me?
She asked you.
She asked me. So
Mitchell, you got chased.
It turns out that she had texted, maybe a half a dozen other people.
You were her last choice.
and everybody. It was supposed to be like this big group thing. Everybody canceled, and it ended up being just the two of us.
It was meant to be.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what was it like for her adjusting to somebody working in the news business and just your crazy hours? And...
I think it was a little bit tough at first because it was, I was working overnights for the first part of our relationship in Colorado Springs, but I think she realized it and she knew, but we were also able to make the schedule work. Mm-hmm. There was one time I was able to bring her lunch after working an overnight shift. So that was nice. And then I moved to Dayside probably midway through my time in Colorado Springs, maybe a little less. And so when I moved to Dayside, basically a 9 to 5 schedule,
not easier.
It pretty well aligns with a teacher's schedule. Not exactly, but it aligns a little more with a typical teacher's schedule. So it worked out well there. But when I started at KYT, I was working overnights, and it was long distance, and our entire engagement was long distance, but we made it work. And it's kind of funny, you think of a 2-hour time difference being difficult, but it almost made it easier.
I was going to say it might have helped you.
Yeah. Colorado is 2 hours behind Lexington. So when I moved here, when I took the opportunity at KYT, I was producing the 6 a.m. news, as you know, Andrea.
For me.
Yes. So I was in your ear, and I'm sorry, but I was in your ear for about a year before I moved to daytime.
Telling me and Bill to hush, which is not an easy thing to do.
It's like herding cats.
But it ended up working out really well because I would come in at around midnight when I worked overnight, so I would try to leave the house by around 11 o'clock at night. So that was 9 o'clock her time. So I would get Cheryl right as she was going to bed, and I'd talk to her on the way in. I got off at around 8 a.m. when I was working overnights here and producing the 6 o'clock hour of the morning news. So I was calling her at about 6 o'clock her time, just as she was waking up. And there would be calls sprinkled in between based on my sleeping schedule. So, it was long distance and it was difficult, but we made the time difference work to our advantage.
We have to make everything work in this business, like this podcast, because I know you have to produce a show now in a few minutes. So is there anything that we didn't ask you that you would want to talk about?
What's it been like once you started working at KYT? Because obviously you kind of knew who we were from your time at YMT. Yeah. But then once you actually started working here, what was that like?
Well, it was kind of interesting because I never really saw myself as coming to Lexington, because a lot of people from WYMT end up at WKYT.
You knew most of the staff when you got here.
I did.
Because you all had worked together.
I really did. I mean, Angela Reigert I worked with at WYMT. Matthew Rand I worked with at WYMT. Jim Caldwell I worked briefly with at
Poor
WYMT. And I'm sure there's others who I didn't mention. So there are a lot of people there. And I made a pit stop in Colorado Springs before I came here. But I really have fallen in love with Lexington. It's a really great city. It's the perfect size, a good area, and the really nice thing for myself and for Cheryl is it's drivable if we want to see our families. She's from the Pittsburgh area, so it's drivable to go there. I'm from Evansville. It's about a 3-hour drive coming and going from Evansville to here, so it makes it close when we want to see family.
Yeah.
That we can make those trips without having to think, okay, well, we're going to fly home, maybe, once or twice a year.
Yeah. And I know
nice
she's
being
at
in
a good
driving
school.
Yes.
Honey, they breed greatness at that school. Right?
That happens to be your alma mater, yes.
Well,
is that right? Is that what's going on there?
West Jessamine, she's at the middle school, right?
Yes.
That's what I thought. West Jessamine Middle School.
Yeah.
Does she like it so far?
She does.
Well, thank goodness.
She does.
I'd have to be embarrassed if she didn't like it.
Actually, we went to see one of her productions, and I saw your picture on the wall at the high school because the theater production that her kids were starring in happened to be at the high school, and they've got all of the
I didn't even
pictures
know I
up
had
there.
a picture on the wall.
Well, your graduating class picture.
Oh, Lord.
Andrea was thinking they put a picture up like, oh, here's Andrea
I went
Walker.
through a really unfortunate perm highlight phase.
Oh, wow. If
In
you
middle
think
school.
If you think Andrea has big hair now,
Yeah,
tell you.
but this was at the high school, so it was because I think you graduated right
check
around the
that out
same
now.
time I did. I'm not going to reveal the year. I'll let you reveal that if you
Nah, I
want
don't
to.
care.
But
All right, nice. What's it like, trying to wrangle Bill and Andrea?
Listen,
No?
it's not
No?
important.
Come on, I'm just curious.
well, it's you learn to know that there's going to be ad-libbing, and the nice thing about a morning newscast is you know that that's going to happen, so you build time for that.
Yeah. But you didn't know how much Bill likes to talk, did you?
Right, not at first, no.
Which is what people
And
love.
me.
Right, exactly. I mean, we the software that we use to produce our newscast, it's really nice because when you time everything out, it tells you, I'm over 30 seconds or I'm under 30 seconds or however long it is. And I knew that when I was working mornings, I could go into that 6 o'clock hour with a rundown saying under 2 minutes, and I would be A-okay.
Yep.
I think that's one of the things people don't
And
realize.
probably still had to wrangle us
Well,
in.
that too is everything going on in the backgrounds, like stories that are sometimes getting switched, stories that are just getting killed. It's like, okay, we don't need this now. Oh, we got to add something because something ran short. And I think they just don't realize how much is actively happening that they don't see. And ideally, you don't see it on screen. Everything
You don't
looks like it's all
notice.
Exactly,
going
and
smoothly.
and there are some things that you can be flexible with, and sometimes you can't. I mean, when you've got breaking news, obviously you're adding that, and you're getting rid of some other story that you might not have run.
And you used to do both at the same time. You used to anchor and produce at the same time, which
Yes.
I did as well, and it is not easy.
It's not easy, but it's a lot of fun.
It is, because you feel ownership of it.
You
gonna say,
really
it's your
do.
show.
It is your show.
I mean, when I did morning news at WYMT, that show was my baby.
Aw.
It was. You're heavily invested in it because, it's a small station. I mean, for part of that show, or part of the time I was there, I didn't have a co-anchor, so it was myself, Chris Johnson, who worked here for 2 years and is now working in Louisville and is a good friend of mine, and your technical staff, your director and your master control operator. So sometimes it's a crew of 4 putting that newscast together. And you get a real sense of ownership over that newscast because you're a quarter of the staff, and you're trying to put it all together and make sure all the moving parts work together.
When it's good, it's on you. When it's bad, it's on you.
Exactly.
That's the only thing. There's no one else to blame.
Exactly. But you get used to doing everything by yourself, and to be honest, it's a little bit of adjustment when you move up and you realize, oh, I'm not doing this. I can delegate a little bit of this, and it's
hog in the machine.
Yeah, it can be a little bit of a hard adjustment to let somebody else do that and kind of let go.
Yeah. I can certainly understand that.
All right. Well, Mitchell, is there anything else you'd like to say before we go? I've enjoyed this half hour.
I know. No.
I don't think so. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
right, thanks.
Go get back to work.
Well, Andrea, what'd you think of that?
It was good. It was good. And the funny thing is, I feel like I kept saying like, I remember you from then. I remember you from them. It's like me
your
and Mitchell
paths,
had
I was gonna
very
say.
like similar paths.
Two crisscrossed, yeah, in like
Quite a bit.
in like the stories of each other's lives. I guess you'll pop up in the background
I
of
know.
each other. Yeah.
I'll be a secondary character. But it was funny when he was telling the story about how, his wife asked him to go hiking and, she asked all these
Everybody
people
else
before.
bailed.
That is the exact same way that I made my best friend from middle and high school and into college. We roomed together my freshman year of college,
Wow.
but I remember, I think it was maybe 6th or 7th grade. She was going to Kentucky Kingdom during the state fair. And she apparently I didn't hear about this story until like a year later when it was funny, but she apparently had asked like everyone, all of her friends to go, and nobody could go. And her dad told me later that she was like crying because, she really wanted to go and she didn't want to go by herself or, with her brother or whatever. So he just was like, well, what about Andrea Walker? Because we lived like two houses away from each other
What
out in the
about
country.
that girl who doesn't have any
So
friends?
as close to neighbors as you can be out in the country. That girl who doesn't have friends. I had friends back then. I was different back then. But yeah, so I guess she kind of was like, oh, I guess.
And then you all
asked me,
became
and I was
best
like,
friends.
sure, I'll go. And we really did. I mean, the best of friends, like inseparable. So sometimes I
Awesome.
feel like the world works in mysterious ways.
Sure does.
Yeah, but I was a last resort too.
Well, you were telling me you have a story about Alex Walker now. I want to hear this.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think I've told this before, but a lot of people here know about it because sometimes
Your cousin, Alex Walker.
No, unfortunately, no. So people will email the station, and they can either choose to email you personally, or they can choose to email everyone and embarrass you in front of the entire staff at
Yep.
WKYT. So we have this thing called Good Question, and someone emailed and asked if I was Alex Walker's mother. Did you not know this? No. Are you kidding me?
Isn't he like a year younger
He's
than you?
1 year younger than me. I do not like how hard you're laughing at this. Well, clearly Victor didn't read his email.
I'm picturing you getting this email and looking at the computer and seeing your face.
No. Picture it differently.
Okay. Walk me through this.
It's Jim Caldwell, like, doubling
Oh,
over.
Jim discovered it? Oh, that's
Jim
even
saw
better.
it first and was like, oh, boy. Because he knew I'd get mad because I get,
wow.
I'm just an extra person.
Oh, wow.
So he saw it and was just like, oh, she's gonna die.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of, he alerted me to it. And then I just, sulked for a little bit. And I considered things in my life. I went through an extreme makeover. I did cut some hair off, and I remember specifically asking my hairdresser, I was like, can you give me something that'll make me look younger?
Yeah.
I really did, because I've always had the tendency to look older than I am. And I think I'm a little age ambiguous now, but apparently not. That's in my head. I think I'm age ambiguous. Everybody else just thinks I'm.
No, I still think you are too.
You think
I've
so?
always had a hard time figuring out how old you are.
Well, good. Oh, but yeah, that was a humbling experience.
Well, thank you for sharing that
I
on the
know.
podcast. All right, Andrea, do you have a favorite thing this week?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, you're holding it in your hand.
I'm holding it in my hand.
We've been making fun of your French soda.
Yes, it is a French soda that I impulse purchased at Kroger the other day. And this flavor is Dragon Fruit Plum French soda. And it is called, we're not sure, but I think Diabolo or Diabolo.
Diabolo. That's
So-
French. That did more Italian there. That was a problem.
Close enough. Whatever.
It's a me, a Mario. Sorry.
Wow. All right. Moving on. But I guess the first time I looked at it, I just thought it said Diablo. I wasn't really paying close enough attention.
Another great video game.
If you say so. But this morning, Bill spilled his Mountain Dew on the set everywhere.
Which occasionally, so that's the thing, Amber and I anchor in the afternoons, and sometimes we'll come down and the set is sticky. And now I know why. It's happened more than once. Don't just look at me like that. Like I don't know what I'm talking about.
I am not the culprit.
Okay. So there was a soda spilled this morning. Although Bill said he cleaned it up.
He cleaned it up. He slaved and labored on his hands and knees to clean up under your seat, buddy.
Well, I really appreciate that.
But you don't want to see Bill uncaffeinated.
Oh, no.
on a morning show.
Yeah,
You don't want to see anyone under-caffeinated
I've definitely
on a
had
morning
days
show.
where there was one afternoon where the little girl had got up throughout the night, and so I was just dragging.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I'll have caffeine in the afternoon around 1 or 2, but I had missed it that day.
You need a second wind.
Well, I was filling in for Sam that whole week, and during the 4 o'clock, I just stumbled. Same way, 4:30.
Been there.
And Amber looked at me at one point. She's like, "You all right?" I said, "No, I'm not." So I went to my desk where I had some warm Diet L8s, cracked one of those, and basically chugged it during a commercial break. And then I had to spend the whole next break trying not to burp while I was reading my stories because I chugged an L8.
Goodness gracious.
But
You should have just owned it and
by the 5:30, I had I had a little pep in my step and I was feeling good, and so the rest of the show was all right.
It's funny that you said that, like, are you all right? I've had people say that to me before, like they'll text me, or like my mom or something, she'd be like, slow down.
Is everybody okay? Yeah.
No, but like...
Are you too hyped up?
Or like if your producer gets in your ear and they're like, are you okay? You're like, man, am I that bad? I didn't think anyone noticed. I thought I was pulling this off. And you're like, apparently not.
I guess not. So,
all right, so
Diabolo?
anyway, I had 2 of these Diabolo French sodas in the refrigerator, so I was like, I gotta go get Bill.
And only, look, that's a big
drink.
can, only 60 calories a can.
Yes.
No
and
caffeine.
That's the thing. I didn't realize that till later, because he's like, oh my gosh, I could tell he needed it.
Yeah,
He
I
was
just
a little
looking
bit
at the can. It
stressed.
says no caffeine.
I'd never
in very
noticed
small
that
letters.
part,
In
but-
very small letters.
So I laughed because Bill read it Diabolo, which we now know is correct. But Bill is sometimes notorious for mispronouncing words. And in my head, I'm thinking it's Diablo. So I hear Bill say Diabolo right before we go back on air. And there is a
Try not to
section.
giggle.
Oh, I'm like tears. You know what I mean? When I'm trying not to laugh, I cry instead. So, yeah. But it turns out I stand corrected. This is uncaffeinated Diabolo.
So you did him
completely
no
wrong.
good.
I
You just
did
gave him some empty calories.
No favors and made fun of him for something he did correctly.
But you enjoy the soda. That's the point.
Anyway, that's my favorite thing. And I do like, he had the blueberry lemonade, which is good, but I do like this one better, the dragon fruit.
I'm curious. I may have to
plum.
pick some of that up. So last night, Mandy and I went to a live podcast taping at Comedy Off Broadway of Doug Loves Movies.
Ooh.
Yes, with comedian Doug Benson. He was in
Did you
town.
learn anything?
No, I mean, he's kind of...
Different.
I would refer to it as stoner humor. So a lot of that won't apply to me.
Did you prepare appropriately?
No, I definitely did not. But we had a great time.
Do you get
It was
random
hilarious.
drug tested after this podcast
Exactly.
comes
Well,
out?
that's the
You'll
thing.
know
I was
why.
like, no, thanks everybody. But so he was very friendly. I took pictures with us afterwards. It's a kind of a game show format, but it's also very loose. The games, the winners kind of matter, kind of don't.
Yeah.
But each person prepares they call them name tags, but they take movie posters and switch them they'll put their face on them, or like mine was Captain America, the Victor Soldier.
Of course.
And then Mandy, we just did the Wizard of Mandy because she could, we were like, we also didn't know if we were going to be able to come until really yesterday. So we kind of just printed out posters and took a Sharpie to them. Whereas other people used Photoshop. I mean, they were
sure.
nice.
Well, I appreciate the invite. Since you know how much I love podcasts
Are you a big-
and comedy off Broadway.
Are you a big it started at 7:15. You'd have been in bed by then.
I can nap, okay? I can nap. I was mowing the
Well,
yard.
so here's the good news.
It's all good.
You
I
can-
wouldn't have come anyway. I
You
would
can
have
listen
turned
to
it
it.
down.
It'll be out as a podcast, possibly today or
Were
tomorrow.
you a contestant?
I was not a well.
Dang it.
He has other comedians who are on
okay.
as contestants, but we were in the crowd. I have no doubt at some point you'll be able to hear Mandy's laugh because she
I
was
believe
laughing at quite a
that.
bit of stuff. I mean, I was too. It was hilarious. The show is definitely for adults.
Okay. Good to know.
I don't play this in the car with your kids, but it's a very popular podcast.
I've heard of it. I don't know that I've listened to it, but I have heard of it, so it must be.
He has huge guests on there.
Yeah.
This time he had some Cincinnati comedians, but I mean he's had John Hamm and Chris Evans, and I mean just they got Patton Oswalt's on there quite a bit. So he has big guests, and so
He's
yeah.
legit.
Yeah, he's legit. He has festivals and stuff. Although he is one of the final games they play is called Last Man Stanton, and it's they basically pick a movie star and then they have to go down in a row naming movies that person has been in until you run out. The last person.
That's
and it all
fun.
started with based on Harry Dean Stanton.
Okay.
The actor but in Lexington they have Stanton Fest. And I informed him about that because he didn't know that they had a movie festival just about Harry Dean Stanton. So he may come check that out.
I bet his next live taping
So
will
if
be.
he does, that'll be interesting. I'll let you all know about it because I
Because
think
of
that
you.
could be fun.
We'll go to that one.
Which I didn't realize Stanton Fest this year. Dabney Coleman is coming.
What?
Hadn't seen him in a while. And Dennis Quaid and his band.
Wait, dang it. I was thinking of Randy Quaid.
No, that's his brother.
I think I'm the only person that's disappointed.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would say Dennis Quaid is the more famous one, but...
I love Randy Quaid.
I mean, yeah, I'm all about Cousin Eddie.
Eddie?
I mean, yeah.
Come on.
It's great.
An iconic character.
So there we go. So, you'll be able to find that on your podcast feed at some point. It'll be the Doug Loves Movies episode from Comedy Off Broadway in Lexington, Kentucky. And it was a great show. I mean, I really had a good time. It was funny.
Well, good. I'm happy for you.
Yeah.
Feel free to invite me to stuff because as we've established earlier, I have no friends
Well, to be
anymore.
fair, it was just me and Mandy. And, it would have been a little awkward.
I can be a third wheel. I am an expert at it.
All right. Well, next time we go to something fun, I'll let you know.
All right, thank
we can do
you.
a full review afterwards.
I'll bring my dog.
But like I said, you'll be able to listen, and it'll be like you were there.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you all for listening to our podcast. We certainly appreciate it. Feel free to tell your friends about it if you're enjoying it. We need to grow our audience as much as we can.
Yes, give us a reason to continue to do this.
Give us a reason.
And, I am on Twitter as the Victor Puente because, once again,
Mexican
businessman sitting on Victor Puente won't give it to me.
And I am Andrea, WKYT.
I should probably just simplify to that and just be Victor WKYT. I mean, I'm not going anywhere. Might as well just own it.
Yeah, they own you now, so.
They got me for a couple more years.
Don't worry, me too.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye. Sorry.
Oh, we did it at the same time. No, go ahead. Get the big one.
No, you go first.
Bye.
Bye. Much better.